Chapter 11. Up and Away. As the gondola rose quietly through the dark veil of the night, both Graham and Bouncer looked out over the rail at the city falling slowly below them. "Do you know what, Graham?" asked Bouncer absent-mindedly. "One could get quite scared on one of these things if you didn't have the ability to phase shift into a suitably flight-capable form." Once again Bouncer surprised Graham with his reflection and eloquence. "Yes, Bouncer, one could," replied Graham, smiling to himself. "So what's the plan, Graham?" asked Bouncer. "Well, first things first, we get to the penthouse," replied Graham. "Yes, and then?" said Bouncer. "Well, then we work our way around that floor and locate hopefully Sebastian." "Yes, and then?" said Bouncer. "Once we've located him, we then need to work out how we can gather some intelligence." "What do you think?" asked Graham. "Yes," said Bouncer, expecting it to be an appropriate response. "Sorry, Graham, great plan, great plan." Bouncer had clearly simply been saying yes to Graham, and not necessarily paying attention, and his sheepish grin betrayed that truth. Passing the 30th floor, they could start to see where Soller's towers ended, and the ink-black sky started. They were lucky tonight, as it was a new moon, and hence there was not much more than the city lights to pick them out. The boundary between tower and sky was backlit by the lights of the penthouse itself. They were going to have to be careful. It didn't appear that Sebastian liked curtains or blinds, a position that was undoubtedly due to his penthouse location. This high up there was really no one else to overlook him, so why obscure what had to be one of the best views of the city below? Graham slowed the gondola to a crawling rise. "Bouncer, we have to slow right down now. Keep your eyes open for any signs we could be seen." "Graham?" asked Bouncer. "Yes, Bouncer," replied Graham. "Why don't I deploy the drone?" "Oh, that's a fantastic idea, Bouncer. Go on, set it up and get it flying." With his usual efficiency, Bouncer had the drone unpacked and set up in a couple of minutes, and in 2 more it was up and flying with Bouncer on the first-person view screen piloting. "Okay, take it quietly over the far left, Bouncer, then slowly pan back to the right until we see Sebastian. Keep it above the roofline if you can, so that it's less easy to spot." "Not a problem, Graham." Bouncer had this covered. Within 3 minutes Sebastian's location was clear. Sat in the lounge drinking a beer. He was laid back on a settee looking lost in his own thoughts. "He looks comfortable, doesn't he, Bouncer?" observed Graham. "He certainly does. Do you think he's pleased?" "You know that perhaps his deal went well this evening." "That would make sense, Bouncer. Good assumption, but let's try and put some facts to those thoughts." With that, Bouncer deployed the acoustic sniffer, a high-powered microphone that could hear through walls just by the small vibrations made by the voices on the other side. "I'm so happy," sang Sebastian to himself. "Told you," said Bouncer. With that, the phone in Sebastian's lounge rang, and he stopped singing to take the call. "Hi, Sebastian here. What do you want?" Several garbled sounds were audible as the caller spoke, but they remained unintelligible. "I wish we could hear the other side of that conversation, Graham." Bouncer sounded deflated. "Me too, Bouncer, me too." "Why don't we try and tap his phone line?" thought Bouncer out loud. "It's not a building line, Bouncer, that's a mobile. A lot more difficult to tap. If we could get access to the SIM, we could probably clone it, though." "Okay, Graham, what do you need?" "A distraction for starters," replied Graham. "And a lot of luck." Bouncer flew the drone to the opposite end of the penthouse and carefully tapped its landing gear against the roof. "Hang on a minute, will you?" Sebastian said into the handset. "I'll call you back." With that, he stood and started to move towards the opposite end of the penthouse. "There you go, Graham, I think we're on. Best of luck." As Bouncer continued to tease Sebastian with the drone, Graham slipped into the lounge and deftly dismantled the mobile in order to clone the SIM. A couple of minutes later he was done and back out in the gondola. "All done, Bouncer, you can bring the drone back now." "I wish I could, Graham, but something's happened." "What do you mean?" "I mean I've lost control." "What, total or partial?" asked Graham. "Well, I can still fly it. I just can't see where. The camera feed has gone offline." Alright, take it straight up and try and hold it there. I'll phase shift into a helicopter and try and retrieve it. Within seconds and with a melee of flashes, Graham had jumped over the side of the gondola and reappeared as a Robinson R-22 helicopter. He banked wide around the tower so he could gain height without being spotted by Sebastian. Once he'd caught up with the drone, he grappled onto it, at which point Bouncer killed the power. Okay, Bouncer, all safe here. I'll land and stow the drone, then I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can. Roger, Graham, see you soon. It took a few minutes, and no small amount of skill, but within 10 minutes Graham was back beside Bouncer in the gondola. Nice to see you, Graham. You too. What have you found out? Well, once the drone was safe, Sebastian went back to the lounge and then dialed the mobile back, I guess to speak to the previous caller. Well done, good work, let's open the clone. As the cloned call came through, all they caught was the end of the conversation. I'll meet you at the African base in 48 hours. African base? Said Graham. Now that sounds intriguing. We may have to do some corporate research, see what resources Sebastian, or Sepulchre, owns in that region. Either way, I think we're going to have to get a lot more international, and get ourselves to Africa.